Mike.
Good afternoon, all. Hey, this is kind of little bit advanced section. I'm assuming that you know what is agent. Actually, a lot of folks try to understand or giving some answers related to agent. Okay, anyhow, you will understand what is agent because I kind of start from scratch from the computing history. Okay, how we kind of solving the problems using agentic AI agents. Okay, so yeah, don't worry about you don't know agent also that is fine, but if you know agent, that is also fine. But let's start that. So here I'm going to show Manamitra. You know Manamitra, right? I'm assuming that you know what is Manamitra. There is a WhatsApp bot introduced by the government of Andhra Pradesh. Okay, so that you can access all government services using WhatsApp itself. Okay. I'm assuming that that's the otherwise I'm going to find. Okay. So that is WhatsApp based agent or bot, let's say. Agent is a new term. People used to call it bot, WhatsApp bot. Using agentic AI, how we can solve the same problem. Yeah, how we can solve the same problem. Okay. But this time it is entirely different. Okay, you will see how it is different, how it is different from the existing implementation. Okay, so before that, what I'm going to show is let's play the demo first. Okay, let's see how it is. Then we go and see how we are going to implement that part. How we will implement that part. Okay, so that should be two things. We need to understand what is agent. Second thing is how we can implement agents. Okay, first let's see the demo. Okay, I'll share the demo later. Okay, let's just see that. Okay, sorry. So there is some issue with the connectivity. Okay, so yeah, there is some issue with the network. Okay, I'll show the demo. I'll share the demo. Okay, so let's understand that. So what is an application? How application delivery evolved over the time? Okay, so you know mainframe computers, right? There are some computers, let's say 70s and 80s. Okay, there is big monolithic computers. Okay, people use that computers, but how? They have only keyboard and monitor. They connected to telephonic wire, and they're using some big monolithic computer. Let's call it mainframe computer, whatever. Right? That's called terminal. That's called terminal. Okay. So in the terminal, they are giving instructions to the computer and waiting for the response. In the terminal, they are giving instructions and waiting for the response. Okay. Now those instructions, now we are calling it as prompt. Just understand that. Okay. We are giving instruction to the computer, and the computer do something. Let's say processing, transformation, storing, or retrieving some information and giving the output. Right. That instruction, some processing, and giving the output. Again, we'll give one more instruction. It's called loop, right? This is generally called loop. Right? Instruction, there is some processing or computation. After that, we'll get that output. So this is even before ChatGPT. Right? ChatGPT, what you are doing? You are giving instruction. Now that's called prompt. You are waiting for the output. Again, you give the one more instruction. So that's how the first computing era started. This is even before ChatGPT. Our computing era started from the terminal. Okay, you are giving instruction to the computer and you are getting the response. But you know, those instructions are not natural language instructions. Okay, it can't be Telugu, it can't be English, or it can't be some other language. It is kind of predefined instructions. Computer can only understand some instructions. So those are called commands, you should say. You know Unix terminal, Unix commands, right? I'm assuming that all of you have some course related to Unix, right? Right, the commands. So this computation, that computers understand those instructions only. These are not natural language instructions. These are terminal labs. But there is same paradigm you're using ChatGPT, but you need a kind of analogy. Analogy is there, right? ChatGPT, what you do? You kind of give the instruction, you wait for the output, again you do the instruction, right? So first terminal lab started like that only. Okay, that is 70s and 80s. From 80s and 90s, what happened? Okay, this terminal, you have only keyboard and monitor, but you connected to the big computer, so through telephonic wire. But 80s and 90s, something happened. There is something called a microprocessor came into the picture, and the personal computer became available. So instead of only monitor and keyboard, now there is some computer. What this do? We can do little computations also, little bit of computations also. That is when the personal computing era started. So Office Suite, entire application you can run in your computer, not in the big monolithic computer. Let's call it as mainframe or server, right? Right? So GUI applications, GUI also came at the same time. So the two things happened. One is your computer, personal computer can run the application. And what is application? First of all, what is application? Let's say I'm a I'm working as a tax consultant, right? For my client, I have to solve the tax problem. I have to save some tax on that. That's my job, right? I can do using pen and paper, right? That's what people used to do before computers. You can do pen and paper, right? Or I can use some piece of software. That piece of software is generally application. The application is some software which will serve the purpose of whatever it that is, your job, your role. Okay. In case of, let's say, right, that is not only for work, right, for entertainment. There is some application. YouTube has some application, right? So these are the applications. Okay. Now you know terminal application. Now you know GUI applications. But what happened? Your personal computation, personal computers can run something. But after that, the internet came into picture, right? If you see terminal, that's what, right? There is no computer. You have only keyboard and monitor. You are giving instructions. You are getting the output. Again, the personal computer come into picture. Now the entire application is running in your own computer, but it has some limited capability. Okay. Now again, you have to connect to big computer. That's called server. Server is providing service. Service is nothing but endless application. That's what imagine that. Service application. What's the difference? Application is service plus UI. Application equal to service plus UI. Okay, service generally called backend. UI something called front end, right? Just imagine that. That's how that we need to kind of model that's application. Application has two parts to it. One is front end, second is back end. Okay, back end. What is this back end? Back end generally your data models. That's called data models, and your business logic or calculation or computation, right? So back end, most of the time you're storing data in back end, and that back end where you generally store the data. If it is structured data, you store in databases. There are various types of data stores, relational data stores, document stores, key value stores. Okay, but you store the data. You will do some calculations, computations on that. That's entirely in back end. But front end, where you are kind of interacting, right? You are giving instructions or input. Okay, you are clicking. After going, you are kind of clicking left click, right click, drag, drop. So many patterns, right, come into picture, right? You understood that? See, this is not confident. That's a very hard thing, okay, to understand. Simple. It's how it evolved, right? But agentic AI, most disruption is happening in front end. Okay? Now you are interacting with agent. Okay? You as a user, most of the time you are interacting with the agent. So most of the disruption is happening in front end. What is agent now? Agent some piece of software which is like kind of taking the instructions and working on behalf of you and solving a particular problem. Earlier, let's say it used to take 10 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, 1 hour, 1 day. Now you can accomplish the same job in 2 minutes, 5 minutes. Why? It is simplifying that. Okay. Earlier you have to let's say there is some big monolithic form. Okay, what is form actually? Form is the mechanism where you can use the input to the computer, right? Form, right? In physical also there is bank form, this form, that form, form 21, form 81. Form is one abstraction, one concept where generally people will give the input. Okay? That form also evolved. Earlier it's a very, very basic thing. Now it is evolved so much that there is auto completion. Most of the time, 80% will automatically accomplish that. You will auto complete with just 3 letters. You can kind of fill that form, right? Right? That also kind of simplified. That is digital transformation evolves last 30 years. Most of the time we are using apps only, digital apps only to access most of the services, banking application. or let's say ticket and booking application or movie booking application like that. Okay, let's call it a digital transformation. But now it is AI transformation. Okay, but AI is the transformation or most of that stuff is going on in front end. Your back end of data model storage, retrieving, indexing, scaling to billions of users, I don't think that's going to change. Okay, but the modality, how we are going to interact with the application is going to change big way. Okay, but let's take the terminal. Only input is mostly text, right? After doing, you can kind of upload images, videos, and all that stuff. But universally, there are only five types of data types. First is text, textual data. Second is image. Third is audio, video. And the fifth one is binary. Binary mostly used for metadata. You can combine all the files, you can create infinite formats of data, like PDF, docs, and all that stuff. Okay. So, in first terminal, this only modality is text, right? Modality. Modality in sense, I told you, right? Five types of data types: text, image, audio, video. Okay. So, now the second is you can have upload the data, but most of the time that is only for storing and retrieving it, showing to the user. You are not processing the image. There is little bit processing of image and all, but it can't extract the data and all. There are so many technologies like OCR and all, but that's not matured enough. You can't really use in real life application. But agentic is changing that. Actually, we have shown the demo. They most of them form filling happens by uploading your Aadhaar. That's it. Or uploading your voter ID. You are not giving, let's say, 10, 20 feeds. You are just uploading whatever you have, right? Most of the data are unstructured. When I say unstructured, it's image or audio, video, that's called unstructured. Even textual also, when there are no properties of it, that's called unstructured. Okay. Maybe the terms are little advanced, but just try to at least remember these terms: unstructured data types, multiple modalities, agent and all. Okay, so where is the disruption is happening? The disruption is happening in front end, right? So let's take that. So interface disruption. A is interface disruption. Interface is what? We are interacting with the computer. That's called interface, right? So that is front end. Okay. So yeah, you can do that. So LLM started with ChatGPT the textual modality. You just give the instruction. That's called prompt, right? Then again you go to that's the loop. Loops are very important actually. Why I'm saying, right? Loops are everywhere, right? Now it's called agentic loop. Agent also have one loop. Agentic loop. What this agent will take? Will take one event or input. Okay, will accomplish something. Again, it will wait for that input. Loop, understanding loop is important. Right? GUI loop actually. If you take any GUI application, that's a GUI loop. Okay, it is waiting for the event. It's a mostly event or whatever event. Again, it waits for the event. You do some processing. Again, it waits for that side. Loops are everywhere. Okay, agentic loop. Now we have agentic loop. Okay, let's take that. Multiple modalities we haven't told, right? Agents are very good at understanding these multiple modalities. Okay, earlier, if you let's say form of 100 fields, you take 10 to 20 minutes or half an hour, sometimes it's let's say 2-3 hours. Okay, you can fill that using agentic AI within no time, right? Or you no need to type also, right? You can instruct that. You can fill the form using your own voice, Okay. Any questions? Okay. Forget about that. What was the terms I'm telling? Any questions? Okay. Just take a step back. This is just common sense. Computer science has only 40 fundamental abstractions are concepts. 30-40 fundamental abstractions computer science has. If you can master those 30-40 concepts of abstraction, that's it. You are an expert. By the way, my background, I didn't tell you, right? My name is Samishwar, so I have 22 years of experience and I IT company alumni. Okay, I'm a Jan alumni. I'm co-founder and founder of Finch Technologies. So we are working on agentic AI in healthcare, education, and governance. So we are working with another best government and building a Manometra agent. Okay. So let's take that. So agentic AI disruption interface and taking the input. Right? Input is multiple modality input. Okay. So you understood, right? How applications evolved from the terminal, okay, desktop applications or in applications running in your own personal computer. Again, you need to kind of divide into two parts, front end and back end. Back end is kind of running remotely, some service, back end generally called service, and it will expose something to the front end, that generally called API, right? It will expose something to the front end, right? Front end will talk to the back end using the API. Okay. Now we are in agentic AI application. Okay. Agentic AI application, but application architecture not going to change. There will be always a front end, there is always a back end. Our back end also has, I told you that, data models, logic, computation, calculation, storage, indexing, all the stuff not going to change. Okay. But it is completely going to change software. How? The front end user interface disruption is one thing which is imminent. Okay. And especially that is from the end user's application perspective. But the software developer's perspective, how it's going to change? It is accelerating the development of the software. Nowadays, I don't write most of the piece of software. 80 to 90% of the software is written by the LLMs only. But what you should know, okay, entire system architecture you should know. Okay, you should know what are the different components. You should know how to interface with one component to other component. That piece, I don't think will take some time. Okay, maybe 10, but human supervision, human in the loop is required. That's most important. Okay, so your job is operator or supervisor. Supervisor, that's it. Your job as a software engineer is going to change as an operator or a supervisor. That's it. But you should know, right? There is a machine, industrial evolution, machine came in the picture. But machine can't operate itself and it can't produce the goods, right? Somebody has to, right? There are so many workers, right? With industrial revolution, also so many workers. The role changed. Earlier, whatever they used to do with the hands, right? They are doing it with machinery. But the role kind of evolved. Okay, that's most important. But here also, as a software engineer, your role is kind of evolving. It's little different. The job is little different. You are not writing code, but the same fundamental abstraction concepts you have to know. Okay. As a software engineer, you need to master 4 different skills. One is the problem solving skill. That's not going to change. Okay. Second thing is the domain expertise. What is the domain expertise? Whatever domain you are working on, right? You need to have the firm understanding of the entire domain. Let's take banking or financial institutions. Right? You need to understand what is ledger, what is debit, what is credit. That's not going to change, right? That's generally called domain expertise. The third thing is yes, programming. This is changing. Okay? But the fundamental abstractions of what is a programming language, stack-based, register-based languages, blah 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 blah. What is the heap stack? How it's going to change and how it's not going to change. Okay? The programming. The fourth one is the testing skill. Okay. So these are the 4 fundamental skills that as a software developer, engineer, you should know. One is problem solving. What is problem solving? Your data structures and algorithms, I would say. Right? Right? So that's not going to change. You have to know. You may not be that low level algorithms, okay, low level B trees or binary trees and blah blah blah. That's not required. But so this is evolving. But let's take that what is Manamitra? I have that evolved. Most of the folks know, right? Anyhow, so Manamitra is trying to accomplish the government services using a digital revolution so that you don't need to go to most of the offices are bureaucratic, right? There's a lot of red tape, is bureaucratic. They will always say something. So government wants to change that part. Okay, they want to bring all the services to the mobility to your mobile application, but the problem is that the current implementation, like I said, there are 700 services, right? The browsing, navigating them itself is very hard. Very hard. I don't know which department. So I don't know water is which department. I don't know ration card which department. I don't know, right? So, but here we are changing that. With agentic AI, you don't need to know. That has that intelligence. Okay, you just ask what you want. It will rightly identify which service. After that, you start the form. Let's say your request, you start the request. That's simply called form, right? I told you, form is an abstraction or a concept where you kind of give the input to the application or software, right? Form, right? You will start the form process. There also you don't need to manually. There is drop downs and all. That's also going away. There is no drop down. So there also you kind of give the input manually. No need to give the input manually through voice or image. Actually, I would have shown the demo, but I'll show them. Okay, that's it. That is entire accessing the government services is becoming accelerating like a 100x. So the tech stack, let's see. I think you have Gemini models, right? Gemini live model. In AI Studio, you would have seen that Gemini live model, right? What is the difference between the live model and the normal LLM, right? Okay, let's understand a little bit about it. 2 minutes about LLMs, right? That's a layman term. Just assume that LLM is kind of a compression. You then entire universal knowledge, you compress it and put it in some form. That's it. This is a layman term. And you given some interface to that, some API. And I say API, right? You give some API, that's it. Entire universal knowledge, you given to that, and you given some API to that. Okay? That API, you only talking textual input, right? Or image input, or audio and video input. But live models, it will automatically take all these modalities, but it will give back the audio also in the real time as a human being. LLM is acting as a human being. It can take the text, it can take the audio, it can take the video. He showed the screen share, right? So how screen share works, you know that? No. General how screen share was screen share. Yeah. How?
So it basically dissecting each and every frame and identifying.
Exactly. Video is nothing but image, right? Right? There are some frames per second, whatever that frame is. Right? That video, some frames, screenshot, that's how the screenshot works. Okay? And it will identify the coordinates where you are clicking. It will identify the key input. And it will transmit the mouse coordinates as well as your key inputs to the other computer, let's say. Same thing, it will replay. Most important thing is image. Take the screenshot, send that. Take the input, send that. Again, replay that. That's how the screen share applications work. But anyhow, the Gemini live model, it will take the audio in, audio out. That's the most different part. Differentiating factor of normal LLMs and live LLMs. Gemini live model, I'll show that. Okay. Gemini live model will take the audio in, audio out. Okay. So Flutter, I'm assuming that most of you know about Flutter. Flutter is a cross-platform mobile application development kit, right? Android native application. If you want to build, you need to know about the Android platform, APS, SDK. Okay. Selections. Take a step back. You don't know anything about SDK. There's so many terms: API, SDK, library, platform, that services, this services. Simple. You are not writing all the piece of software, right? You are using somebody else's software. That's it. That generally called SDK. So that the development of something, you are accelerating it by reusing the piece of software. But to use that piece of software, you need to know that API. Okay. But whatever that piece of software, sometimes we'll call it as platform, library, sometimes we call it as a package, sometimes we call it as a SDK, that Google ADK, nothing. You are using some piece of software developed by someone so that it will accelerate developing your agent. Agent development kit is SDK actually. There's little difference between libraries, package, and SDKs, but for you it doesn't matter. You will take that and you're accelerating development of agents. Yes, agent development kit, right? So here we are not using any library or the toolkit to develop the agent. We are using something called live kit. Okay. How many of you know video conferencing, right? Everybody done will do the video conferencing, right? How video conferencing will work? Video conferencing. WhatsApp video call also, right? Yes, right. Underline there is some technology. Underline there is some technology. What is that? It's something called WebRTC. Okay. Yeah. So most of the audio video happens through WebRTC. Text conversation happens through WebSockets. Okay. But text conversation happens through WebSockets. Okay. Audio video call will happen through WebRTC. Okay. We are using one library for WebRTC. That is the live kit, Gemini live model, and the data store. I told you, right? Your data has to store somewhere, right? The generic data store database. But why there are the database as data store are also different? Let's take a step back. Understand what is data. so data, right? You have some name, right? You have some gender, right? Okay. The properties as a human being, you have some properties, some qualities, right? You need to capture that, right? That is generally called structured data. Property or attribute. That's called structured data. As that structured data you can store in databases in multiple forms. First form is relational form, tabular form, or document form. So there, the tabular form means there is a restriction that you have to arrange as the columns and rows. In document form, there is no restriction. Columns are fixed columns. In relational database, columns are fixed. But in document, columns are not fixed. Okay. So, or I don't want to segregate into multiple columns. I have only key and I have value. Those are different types of data store. Okay, data store, structured data. Unstructured data is image, audio, video, these are all unstructured data. But most of that we are dealing with structured data. Okay, you are storing structured data in databases, data stores, retrieving it, calculating computation, doing that, sending to your front end or UI or whatever your agent. Okay, I think he discussed about tool, right? So tool, MCP, model context protocol, right? So let's take this step back. I told you, right? Agent is kind of your interacting with, but it has to interact with your backend, right? But how agent is going to interact with your backend? It has to know API, right? Either front end has to integrate with the API or agent has to integrate with the API. There's no other way, right? But let's say ChatGPT is one agent, your Gemini agent, there is some other agent. Instead of integrating 100 times, you are kind of standardizing the API. That is called MCP, Model Context Protocol. You will kind of standardize the API so that any agent can plug into that API and can work. Without you rewriting 100 times, there are 100 agents without rewriting 100 times. You are writing only once and exposing that using MCP, and that agent will interact with that. What agent is doing, by the way? What agent is doing? You will get use output, right? That is only generally called, this is not doing anything, by the way. That is generally called generation, text generation, image generation, video generation. But actually in real world, that's not enough. It has to accomplish action. It has to perform some action, right? How it will perform the action using tool, that generally called tool. How these tools are exposed using MCP, right? So we are using Supabase as our data store, and he told about RAG, right? Forget about RAG. So there are only two things: search, that is lexical search or BM25 search, keyword based search. Okay, forget about lexical and all. This is keyword based search. Okay, 25 years we kind of optimized it. There are synonymous, there is a normalization, blah, 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 blah. But it's not enough, right? So then we came semantic search or natural language search. Okay, this is search, keyword based search. This is natural language search, semantic search. RAG is nothing but semantic based search. I told you there are only 30-40 concepts in computer science. If you know 30-40 concepts, you are an expert in computer science. Okay, we will discuss that later. Okay, Supabase is a data store as a data store as well as the search, semantic search store. Okay, semantic search store. And we are using Supabase, but Mem0 layer actually underlying it is Supabase only, but it will provide nice primitives APIs so that our agent development becomes easy. Mem0 is semantic layer, I would say. So let's say Manamatra has an application we want to solve it. How we are going to solve it? Let's take a step back and understand what is it. Okay. So first we told, right, in all of Manamatra the 700 services, without I knowing what is the department, which services it is, it's an entirely difficult part. That is intent to detect detection is the first step. First, you need to understand what user wants to, which service he wants to interact with. Okay, that is called discovery or intent detection. Okay, so before that, you need to write some rules. This guy said ration card rules. This guy said some Annadata something, whatever. This rule, this service. That's called rule-based systems, right? Before agent or something or natural language LLM, there is something called rule-based systems. Okay. Now there is no rule-based system. Now it is entire LLM. Okay. How we are solving it? We are giving entire. There are 760 services and the description of the services to LLM in part of system instructions or system prompt. Okay. That is intelligent enough. It has some intelligence about all the government, all the departments, some intelligence is there. We are augmenting that intelligence with this system instructions. That's why it's called retrieval augmented generation. Our RAG is retrieval augmented generation. You are augmenting that. It has some knowledge, but a static knowledge. LLM, every LLM has super knowledge, super intelligence, but it is a static knowledge. It doesn't know, most of them may not know. So you have to give that data or content. There is difference between data and content. Generally, a constructed data is called content. Okay? So most of that you have to give the data content to that LLM. Let's augment that. That's why it's called RAG, retrieval augmented generation. Okay? So we are augmenting our system instructions with the, okay, what is the service? The description of the service. What is the service? That's it. It will figure out which service it is. Okay? We are not, there are no rules. We are not writing any code. It's very difficult to write code also. So we are not writing any code. We are giving all these services and the description, and it is figuring out which service it has to invoke that. Second thing is, once it has to figure out the service, there are big form actually. I said there are 20 fields, 30 fields also. We kind of automating that by providing multiple modality inputs, right? You can give through voice, you can give through image also, right? So that is the second part. Okay. But most important thing now is agentic AI applications are stochastic application or non-deterministic applications. What is deterministic and not non-deterministic? Whatever piece of software you write in now, right? They're all deterministic. If you give the same input, it will give the same output. But LLMs, you give the same prompt, you give a different output. Right? Non-deterministic, stochastic, that's another stochastic process. Okay? So, supervision is very much required. Any agentic AI application, human in the loop, or supervision is required when you are deploying critical services like government services. Okay? Human in the loop is very much required. Human in the loop, enterprises, in banking, let's say financial institutions, all the stuff, when you are deploying it, human in the loop is very much important. Okay? So, what is the impact it has on the government delivering the services? Now, it's very easy. Even semi-skilled people also, even semi-literate also can kind of access the services. Okay, in our pilot, people are, this is so easy so that they can access the services without much assistance. Okay, in Manamendra under somebody has to be there. The customer, they have to educate them. This is the department you have to map, blah, 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 blah. You need to blah, blah. Now, without much assistance, they could able to access the services. Okay, so yeah. Finally, agentic AI is there. AI revolution is there. So somebody says AI is bubble. Don't believe that. It's going to change. Any revolution, let's say internet revolution, there's a bubble. There's economic bubble, tech bubble. Economic bubble is there because there's so much cash is flowing in the system. That's going to crash. Right? Tech bubble, there's no tech bubble. Okay? You have to be ready for agentic AI and AI revolution. Your role is going to change, whether it's developer, whether it's engineer, whether it's develop scope, it's completely changing. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, let me know. So we have some openings. If anybody wants to work part of the team, if you have 1 or 2 years of experience, please let me know. Thank you so much.
I have a question like we in India, particularly, let's say Manipur is about Andhra Pradesh, and we speak in different accents, and most of the people are like they don't speak English, and even if they speak English and maybe if they speak Telugu, if we try to make something, no, the models they can't understand the accent and cannot confirm like as you said, it may not understand it clearly, and it might think a bit different as it hallucinates the model they usually hallucinates a lot.
Actually, I will show the demo, okay? Okay, exactly. I very right question actually. So I used to work in IIT Kanpur with the same language models 23 years back. Okay. We were working on, let's say, RNN, LSTM. Language models evolved. The transformer architecture is so good, okay, so that you only has to provide the data, and GPU. Why Google data center in Andhra Pradesh is very important? Google has the computing power, right, and data. They will kind of become in, right? Computing power and the data. Okay, transformer architecture only that Sarvan project, right? Sarvan as a company actually. They used to work for IIT Madras, used to try to Kanpur, and we used to collaborate on that 23 years back. Our model sucks. Yeah, that's right. They used to. They were not working because the technology was not there. Okay. So now If they're so good that I will show the demo. Actually, you know how powerful the models are. Yeah, I'll show that. Okay, because it's evolved. As a AI engineer, I would say it's evolved. Let's say 1 lakh x than what used to work.
And one more thing is like when you talk about Gemini Live, you talk about speech-to-speech model.
Yes.
Basically, that's something that different. So usually we give input in the form of text, and then it converts into speech, and then that's how it usually works.
Yeah.
But speech
So
to speech is something
yeah, just 2 minutes. So just give 2 minutes, okay? The speech to speech model, there are two ways it will work actually. One is speech in, speech out. That's generally called live models. Okay? There is a pipeline of model was also there. The speech to text, one step, text to LLM to text, text to audio. So this is called speech to text STT, text to text LLM, text to audio. This is PTS. Okay? There is a latency of 800 milliseconds in our testing. Okay. Now we have latency of 200 milliseconds actually. So with the speech to speech models, that's the difference, right? Text to speech, speech to text, again LLM interface, again text to audio. This is a pipeline model. So live models, we are avoiding these 3 steps. There is only one step. LLM.
So, sorry to interrupt, but I guess we need to be closing for live.
Sure. Okay. So yeah, please reach out to me if you have any questions. At the same time, you are also having some more things. Okay. Thank you so much.
Guys, your lunch is in the auditorium, so please feel free to make your way. Just the one that you come outside from now, that's the same place that you need to go for lunch. Thank you so much. We'll be sharing sir's screen and his social handle, so you can just speak out to him. Sure. Thank you. Have a pleasant experience.